Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Carmen and this here my channel is called Cardamom Pins. This is a Flosstube and a video that is going to be mostly about cross stitch, a little bit of knitting, and quite a lot of talk about retreat prep because I'm going to retreat next weekend and I'm very excited, but I'm also a little bit nervous. Anyways, so welcome to everyone, old and new. If you're new, I hope you'll stick around. Maybe you want to subscribe if you feel like it, but like no pressure, I guess. But anyways, in this video, I have a bunch of finishes to talk about. I actually have 4 finishes, and I have a new start, and I have a SAL, so a stitch along that I'm starting next weekend at this retreat, and a whole bunch of other little bits and bobs. So I'm just gonna get right into it. So 3 of the 4 finishes that I have to talk about, unfortunately, I don't actually have them physically here with me anymore because all 3 of these were models. I do have pictures of them, so as I talk about them, I'll have those pictures up on screen, so at least you'll know what I'm talking about. But yeah, anyways, I have been model stitching for the designer Leanne van Leyen, who is the designer behind 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers, and she has a few upcoming designs that she asked me to model stitch for her, so that was quite an honor, and I actually had the chance to hand these models off to her last weekend, so I got to meet her in the flesh. So the first piece, and actually it's 2 pieces because I stitched it twice in 2 different colorways. The first one was a reproduction sampler. The original stitcher, her name is, well, it was Maria Kane Ports, and this was a show towel, and I'll have both colorways on screen here so you can get an idea. One of them was stitched on 36 count linen in a watermelon color linen with 2 strands of thread, which I haven't done in a really long time, and it's like kind of challenging. I did experiment with a couple of ways of making the stitches look nice because I actually find stitching with 2 threads a little challenge. Well, it's not hard in the sense that the stitching itself isn't that hard, but I want it to look nice, especially if it's a model for another person. So I really wanted the stitches to lay flat, and because it was like a cream colored floss, it is sort of obvious when the stitches are kind of twisted or if the thread is twisting on itself. So I had tried to use my version of a laying tool. That was something that was recommended to me. And the best I could find as a laying tool was a knitting needle. But it was kind of annoying because I felt like I needed 3 hands. I stitched 2-handed. Maybe if I didn't stitch 2-handed, it would have been fine. Anyways, and honestly, I didn't really find that using the knitting needle helped me that much. So in the end, I just did, I think it's called railroading, where, I mean, you can find tutorials of this online if you've never heard of this and you're curious, but it's just, you kind of run your needle in between the 2 threads before passing it through so that it's sort of, it's like combing your hair, like it just sort of detangles the threads, and so it looks a little bit nicer. And I mean, it slows me down a lot, but I think it was worth it. And I'm pretty happy with my stitching. I don't know if it would win prizes at a state fair, but I was happy with it, and Leanne was happy with it. And the funny thing about that one, I experienced something kind of trippy while I was stitching that, and I was actually wearing this sweater, which I have knit. And I'm not going to talk about the sweater, but I just want you to notice the color of the sweater, which is like kind of a dusty pink. Anyways, the linen was this like super bright watermelon color, and I have a stitching light that is also very bright, and I stitch with the linen quite close to my face. And I don't know if you've I'm sure some people have seen this or you'll know what I'm talking about, but there are these optical illusions that I've come across online a couple of times where something in a shadow is actually the same color as something that is lit up, but they look like 2 different colors or 2 different shades because your eyes are playing tricks on you. Anyways, I was stitching on this super bright pink linen, and at one point I looked down at my sweater and it looked brown, like it looked beige. It didn't look pink anymore, and it was it was such a trip. Like I was, I just like needed to put the stitching down and like blink my eyes and walk around my apartment and just like look at other colors for a second. And then my sweater changed back to pink. Anyways, so beware if you use watermelon linen by Weeks Dye Works. It might do tricks on your eyes. I'd never experienced that before. Anyways, but yeah, so I did that one. And then the next version of that was stitched on a 40 count linen in a kind of pink colored floss. It's sort of the opposite version of the original. And yeah, that was 40 count. So I just did it with one thread, and that was much more up my alley. And actually, so I had stitched, so there are 3 models that I had to make for Leanne, and I had stitched 1.5 of them, like, I don't know, a month ago. And then the month of April has been a really busy work month for me. So I just haven't had a lot of time to stitch. And also when I did have time, I didn't really have like the brain power for it. So I was mostly just like knitting socks or not crafting at all, just because I didn't have really all that much time. Anyways, but then I was gonna be in Ottawa in my hometown last weekend because my Opa, my grandpa, just turned 90. He's all grown up. Anyway, so I went home for a couple of days for his 90th birthday. And then I kind of thought, oh, well, Leanne lives just outside of Ottawa. So maybe, and we had been in touch about me maybe stitching some other models for her. So I just kind of like shot in the dark. I just figured, okay, well, I'll shoot her an email and see if like maybe she wants to meet up and I can just give her the models instead of having to put them through Canada Post and pay for shipping and the insurances and all that. I can just hand it to her. And it actually ended up working out. And that was great, but the only downside to that was that I had actually only stitched 1.5 of the models. So I really needed to get cracking, and I was working during those days. So I was pulling in long hours to finish the other model and then get to the second version of Maria Caneports, which was the one on 40 count. I saved that one to the end because I kind of figured that would be the easiest. But yeah, these are show towels, and I asked Leanne when I met her what a show towel was, and she gave me a very good description, but I don't think I could really repeat it for you. There was a lot of information, something about the Huguenots in France going to Germany and then ending up in like Rhode Island or Pennsylvania. I don't know, some kind of a German tradition where you would hang them in your kitchen, I think. And it was a display of, you know, the needleworking abilities of the eligible women. And also maybe something to do with covering the actual towels that you use to wipe your hands. You wouldn't want to wipe your hands on the beautiful sampler, I would hope. Anyways, this is sort of what I recall from what Leanne told me. I'm sure that I'm getting a lot of things wrong and I'm missing a lot of important information. But yeah, these pieces were actually quite big. They had just over 3,000 stitches in them, I think. But it was really spread out, so there's a lot of breathing room in there, which made counting a little bit hard because I had to count like 30 spaces from one motif to the next. So I think all of the motifs are in the right spot. I did double check and triple check. I think it's all okay. Anyway, so the other sampler that I got to stitch for Leanne was a model of Anna Maria Smith, so another Maria. And this one was challenging in a different way. So this was stitched on 46 count Pub Crawl by Roxy Floss, which is a linen that I had heard about, I had seen pictures of, but I had never seen in real life, and obviously I'd never stitched on it myself. And I've got to say, it is a like very, very stunning color, and the combination of the kind of cream color on that in the tiny little stitches looked so nice and clean and polished, and I was really proud of that one. But it was kind of challenging because 46 count, I do stitch on 46 count quite frequently, and actually the new start that I'll show you in a minute is on 46 count, and that's going great. But Pub Crawl is a very dark linen. I'm almost certain that it is the darkest linen I've ever stitched on, like by far. And it was hard to see what I was stitching. My stitching light has 5 brightness settings, and when I'm stitching, I usually have it on setting 3. For this, I had it cranked all the way to 5, and I was still having a hard time seeing the holes. It wasn't so much seeing the holes, it was making sure that I wasn't stitching over 3 threads instead of 2, because I rely on how the weave is on the linen, if you know what I mean, to make sure that I haven't gotten off by a thread, and it was just really hard to see that on that dark of linen. So the final product though was very, very worth it, and I hope that my pictures kind of capture that. But anyways, I will admit that it was a little bit challenging. If I were to stitch that again, I would probably just go with 40 count, but there was something really stunning about having those teeny tiny little stitches on that fabric, and I'm very curious to see how she's going to finish these pieces. They all had like 4 or more inches of margins all around, which I thought was interesting. Usually I go for like 2 inches. I'm very frugal with my linen, so I'm always in the back of my mind thinking like, oh, well, if I have 6 inches of empty fabric on the bottom, like maybe I can stitch a small with that. So I have a growing collection of odds and ends of awkwardly small bits of linen that I like refuse to throw away. And I don't know if I'll ever actually end up using them. But for this, it had a lot of margin, so I think she doesn't know yet how she's gonna finish these, but it'll be interesting to see what she does. I'm especially curious to see what she does with the Anna Maria Smith sampler, the one on the green linen. And actually the first sampler I talked about, Maria Caneport's, she has a 3rd model of this being stitched by another model stitcher, which is on a pink linen with a kind of like deep raspberry colored floss, and it's kind of like a bubblegum version of it. So she'll have a few options, so I guess she'll probably do a few different things with all of those different models. So that'll be really interesting. And you know, that was like one half of what I wanted to talk about with regards of the models. The other half was just, I got to meet Leanne in the flesh. I got to meet her. She's so cool. When I reached out to her, I kind of thought that I would just like maybe get a ride to her house and like knock on her door and be like, oh, nice to meet you, here you go, okay, bye. And that it would be like done. But anyways, we ended up meeting for coffee, and we were there for like 3.5 hours. Like I needed to drink water afterwards because I was talking way too much. So we had a lot to talk about. She knows so much. She also works at Upper Canada Village, and her job is so interesting. And I don't know, I'm fascinated by her. She has like she has so much knowledge, and she's also just like, she's kind of like me in a way. I don't know, we got along great. And it was sort of a small cafe we were in, and we were in there for a while. And so people came and left and sat next to us and left. And I kept thinking to myself, like, I wonder if anybody's eavesdropping on us. And if they're wondering, like, what is this sampler thing that they keep talking about? One of my favorite things is hearing people who have a really niche hobby or interest just like spew out all of their passion and knowledge, and I just find that enthusiasm to be really infectious, and it makes me interested in things that I maybe never would have thought about. So I feel like we were kind of doing that. We were geeking out over a very niche passion that we both have, and there was a small part of me that hoped that people were eavesdropping and that they then went home and Googled, what is a sampler? Who are these crazy ladies at the cafe talking about cross stitch? Anyways, who knows? So I gave her those 3 finished models, and she gave me a new model, and I will pop on screen screenshots from her Instagram of the antique of this piece. And it is a much bigger project than the 3 that I had done for her. In fact, if you put all of the stitches that I did for those first 3 models together, it wouldn't even be half the amount of stitches that I now that I now get to do for her this second time. And this is a historical sampler again. This time the girl's name is Ruth Coyler, so we're moving away from Maria's, and we've arrived at Ruth, and it's so beautiful. She showed me some pictures of the antique, and I mean, I'll have the antique on screen. It's kind of, she shares like sneak previews, so I don't have a complete picture to show you. But I did talk to her last night, and she said that I was allowed to share with you what stitching I have already done. And I started this, like I had like a 6-hour train ride, and I had absolutely no business starting something that evening. I had other work, I had unpacking that I needed to do. I got her little baggie that she gave me with all of the floss and all of the linen, and I put it in my frame, and I immediately got started. And this is the result of, I think this was about 3 days of stitching. So, and I asked her if I was allowed to share this, and she said yes. So, this is all Roxy floss, the linen as well as the floss. And so this is the full size of it. It is, again, a 46 count, but again, because it's not a super dark mossy green, it's actually a very pleasant to stitch in comparison to the pub crawl. Anyways, I have gotten all of the bones in on this sampler, and the border met on my first try. That's always a good sign. I feel like it's a good omen when that happens. And I have gotten just a little bit of the fill-in to do, I mean all of these little flowers to do on the border. So that's gonna go all the way around, and yeah, here I'll show you all of the flosses. By the way, these bags are not mine. I had a couple people ask me about them after my last video, and they are provided to me by Leanne. So I haven't bought them, but I did ask her where she got them, and they are from Dollarama, so the dollar store. I have a bit of a fear of vinyl front bags because I have often heard that charts can, or paper can get kind of like stuck to the vinyl, and then it can ruin your charts. So I have a lot of bags kind of like this, where you don't actually see what's inside. And I trust those, and I like those a lot. But the disadvantage is that you can't see what's inside. So this is kind of like a happy medium. And hey, it's from the Dollarama, so it's probably like $2.50 or something. But yeah, that is a Canadian store. So if you're not in Canada, I don't know, but I'm sure your dollar store has something similar, because it's a nice happy medium because you can still kind of see what's in it. Anyways, here are all of the flosses. She provided 2 skeins of a few colors. However, I suspect that I won't need to dip into any second skeins, but I guess we will see. And this is a really, really beautiful palette. We talked a lot about colors. If you've watched my Flosstube, you may have noticed that I really enjoy talking about color and color theory, even though I'm far from an expert in those things. I just really like color. And Leanne has been very creative and brave in some of her conversions, and the SAL that I'm going to talk about a little bit later is like the perfect example of that. But yeah, she definitely amped up the color a little bit in her, not conversion, but the colors that she chose for this sampler. However, this is not like a bright in your face, like, oh, I need my sunglasses conversion at all. I shouldn't say conversion. It's not a conversion because it's the original. It's still a very, what would you call it? Like sensible color palette, I would say. But, you know, there's a richness to this palette, and on this yellow linen, oh, hello, I think it looks super, super nice. And this linen is, I think it's called Beekeeper, and I was super curious because they released this, Roxy Floss released this a few months ago, I think. And I've been to one retreat before, which was Jacob Palooza, which was also held by Evertote in the fall of 2023. And I bought a bunch of linen when I was there, and one of the pieces of linen that I bought was this. And when I asked Carrie, the dyer of Roxy Floss, what it was, because it didn't have a tag on it or anything, she said that it was an unnamed linen and that it was repeatable. She kind of said it like that. It's like, oh, it doesn't have a name, but like I could make it again. And now that they have this Beekeeper, I'm wondering if whatever the recipe was for this from a couple of years ago is what Beekeeper became, because it's very, very similar. I mean, it's a little different, but you know, dye lots and years pass in between. Anyways, I'm not sure that if I see Carrie and I mention this random yellow linen, she would remember the specific cut of linen that I got a year and a half ago, but I'm so curious to know if I got a piece of Beekeeper before Beekeeper was what Beekeeper is. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. I like linen that is yellow. I have a red sampler in mind for this piece of linen, and this is also 46 count, so it would have taken the dye in a similar way. I'm convinced that this is Beekeeper, so I feel like I got like an inside scoop on this yellow linen. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So yeah, as you can imagine, with this beautiful color palette, this is going to be super gorgeous. There's a berry bowl in the middle of this pattern, and I was home and I, after my meeting with Leanne, I showed my parents the chart. I can't show it to you because there's not like a digital mock-up of it. It's just literally the pattern, so I can't show that. But there's a berry bowl in there, which you can also see on her Instagram pictures. And my mom was like, "Oh, is that a pie?" And then my dad came around and he was like, "That's not a pie, that's a slice of pizza." Anyways, amateurs. Obviously it's a berry bowl. Duh. But yeah, I look forward to stitching that berry bowl because it's big and it's beautiful, which is what I like in berry bowls. Does anyone have like a real life berry bowl? I've only seen them in samplers. Is it just a bowl full of berries? Because it kind of often looks like a little bush with berries or fruit of some kind in it. What's the meaning of a berry bowl? Is it just a pretty thing that kids put on their samplers back in the day, or is there some kind of like religious symbolism or anything? I don't know. We will see. And at Stitch North, this is the only project that I'm going to bring with me. I asked Leanne, because she does want to make sure that any photo that ends up like on Instagram and stuff has her logo on it, just for like copyright reasons, which I totally understand. So I asked her, like, would I be allowed to stitch this at Stitch North because people will see it? And she said it was fine. So if you're at Stitch North weekend 2 and you want to see this in real life, you can come see it. The only thing is you wouldn't be allowed to take any pictures. So you'll just have to take a mental image and then wait for the final thing to be all stitched up. But as I'm sure you can already imagine, it's going to be really, really beautiful. And yeah, I had no business starting this, but I couldn't stop. And now that the hard counting part is over with the border, I get to do all the fun stuff. And I'm pretty sure I've zeroed out on that color. I think the color for this vine was only in the vine. So I think I've already stitched the last stitch in whatever color that was, I don't remember. Anyway, so that's my big whip. And I'm about to have a big start, and clearly this is a 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers themed video because my big start is, again, 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers. So I will pop on screen the model that has already been done of this pattern. This is EmmaKerridge is the name of the original stitcher way back when. I don't remember the year off the top of my head. But anyways, EmmaKerridge, and the name, the title that Leanne has given it is The Upping of the King's Swans. So I had mentioned in my last Flosstube that I wanted to start this at Stitch North, and a few other people also wanted to stitch this, and so there are a few of us who are stitching it. I think there's just one other person that I'm aware of who is attending weekend 2 of Stitch North who will also be starting this with me. But maybe there are more people. So if you are also going to weekend 2 and you are going to start this, please let me know. And then there's also a few people who are not attending and who are in various parts of the world who wanted to join in anyways. So I was like, okay, it's official. We're doing a stitch along. It's a SAL. So there's a few of us doing it. I'm only aware of like maybe 3 or 4 people. But anyways, if anyone wants to join, you are more than welcome. And I mulled over what hashtag to use. I kind of wanted to use the, King's Swans, or the Upping of the King's Swans, since that is the name that Leanne gave it. But my trouble with that is that King's Swans has like multiple S's in a row, and then Swans Sal would again be 2 S's in a row. And I just have noticed that whenever there's like a double of a letter because of 2 words that start and end with the same letter in a hashtag, people tend to mess it up sometimes. So I feel like the safer option is to just use the hashtag EmmaKerridgeSAL. It's just simple, easy to remember as long as you remember the girl's name. So that's the hashtag I'm gonna use. Hashtags on Instagram are a little spotty. Instagram tends to only show you the posts with the most likes. So if ever you start and you want to show it to me, you can either send me a message on Instagram, tag me on Instagram, or you could even send me an email, and my email is in the description of this video. And who knows, maybe it'll just be the three of us stitching this thing anyways. But yeah, as you can probably tell from the model, it is stitched on a bright purple linen, which is quite unusual for a reproduction sampler. And this is something that I've been thinking about a lot. It's something that me and Leanne talked about a lot. And I think it's such an important and valuable conversation to have about authenticity and historical performance practice. And I have opinions on this, and I'm gonna share them. And I would love to know your opinions on this too. So I stitch a lot of reproduction samplers. It is my favorite thing to stitch. I really like stitching these because it makes me feel connected to not only my heritage, especially when I'm stitching Dutch samplers, but just, you know, it's a really special way of honoring people from the past and, you know, the history that brought us to where we are now, all the while creating a really beautiful object that you get to admire in your home. And you get to do it by doing this craft that is very meditative, and for me it's very enriching, and I feel stimulated enough but also relaxed enough that it kind of just like ticks all the boxes for me. So that is why I really like to stitch reproduction samplers in particular. But how do you approach that? Is there a right way of doing it? Is there a wrong way of doing it? And I know a lot of people have really strong opinions. Hey, so I'm popping in because I'm editing my video and I just rambled on for like 20 minutes. So take 2 on this thought, because I know we ain't got all day. Anyways, so I'm actually really curious to know what all of your opinions are on this, because I have a lot of thoughts and ideas about what it means to authentically or accurately stitch a reproduction sampler. And I think there are many different schools of thoughts on this, and I don't think any one of them is right or wrong necessarily. I think a lot of it probably comes down to your own personal aesthetics and what you find visually appealing, and all of that is okay. But I do kind of just want to talk about my own background as a musician for a minute, because I feel like a lot of this is transferable to cross-stitching and reproducing historical samplers. So I have done some study. I've had to learn a little bit about historical performance practice in classical music. And, you know, that comes with playing on different kinds of instruments made out of different materials that are more accurate to how people would have, or what people would have played on back in the day. And for me, what historical performance practice really means is just meeting something of historical origin in our present day. Because at the end of the day, I can't recreate a concert setting from 1853 or whatever. Like it's not possible. I only exist in 2025 at the moment. And so I can try to emulate that, but it's never going to be exactly the same. And I think a really good example of this is with instrument making. The name Stradivarius or Stradivari might mean something to a lot of people, might ring a couple of bells, but it's probably just the most famous violin making atelier of all time. And these instruments, a lot of violins, some violas and cellos as well too, they will sell at auction for millions of dollars. It's just slightly outside of my budget. But anyways, these are also antiques, and they are of incredible historical value, and they tend to sound really good too in general. Some of them have been, you know, terribly maintained and don't necessarily sound great, but they're still these really high value antiques. Anyways, the reason I bring it up is that there are luthiers, like violin makers today, who will get one of these instruments on loan, and they will get x-rays done of the instruments, and they will have professional photographs taken of them, and they will study every millimeter of this instrument, and they will measure the thickness of the wood all over the instrument, and they will somehow measure the density and how the wood vibrates, and they will source wood that has a similar wood grain, that has a similar density. They will carve it in such a way where the thickness all over the instrument is exactly the same, so that when you x-ray the new instrument, it's exactly the same as the antique. And they will go even so far as to create the same scratches and imitate the same patina on the new instrument as the antique has. And when you hold these finished violins side by side, they look indistinguishable. But when you pass them to a violinist and the violinist plays on these two instruments, they don't sound the same because they're not the same. We can't source wood from the same trees that grew 200-300 years ago. The trees that grow today are a little different because the climate is different. Because, you know, maybe there was a volcano one year in 18 something or other that affected how much the soil was acidic or whatever. And there's so many variables. You can't recreate that. Also, there are laws that are changed. Bows used to be made with a little bit of ivory at the tip. You can't do that anymore, legally. Legally, you can't do that anymore. So there are so many variables that you can't control all of them. So it is actually impossible to recreate a violin from that era. You can come pretty close and you can create a violin that looks identical and maybe doesn't sound the same and doesn't feel the same when you're playing it. But it might also be a great instrument that does what you need it to do, and it projects well and it has beautiful sound quality and you take good care of it, but it is its own instrument. And I feel like all of what I just said about those violins applies to stitching a historical sampler. You know, you can recreate the mistakes that the little girl did by, you know, stitching over 3 threads instead of 2, or using an uneven linen, or using colors that look exactly like the front of the antique, but it's never going to be exactly the same. So my personal thoughts on authenticity and accuracy is to approach it from the same standpoint as the girl would have. And if you look at the back of a lot of these antiques, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, already know this, but some of the backs of these antiques are super electric bright colors that look nothing like the fronts, and they have a totally different aesthetic. And I mean, I think about the little kids that I know today. Most of them, if they're given a box full of crayons, the colors that they're reaching for are not browns and blacks and grays. They're gonna go for the electric blue and the lime green and the flamingo pink, and that's what they're gonna do their drawing with. And you know, it's possible that back in the day they didn't have access to all of those colors, but I feel like if they did, they probably would have been really into it. So when I think about EmmaKerridge and what Leanne has done with her interpretation of this historical reproduction sampler, is that she's met 2025 in that interpretation. She's looked at what is possible today, and she's honoring that little girl by, you know, recreating the chart of what the pattern would be, and, you know, drawing from whatever the color palette was that Emma used that was accessible to her. But she's also looking at what materials do we have today? How can we play with this? And I personally think that that is actually a super accurate way of handling that question of how do I meet this sampler in 2025? Because I feel like if EmmaKerridge existed today and she saw all of those fun colors, she'd be pretty excited about it. So one is not necessarily better than the other. I also love the grungy, patina, dark and dirty aesthetic of some of the samplers that I myself have stitched. I think that's really beautiful in its own way, but I don't think that one is better than the other. I think there's definitely space for both, and I find this to be a really interesting topic, and I would love to know what your thoughts are on it. So thank you for listening to my TED Talk. Back to the video. So anyways, I did like a kind of pre-order thing that Everett Tote had going on their website, so I will pick it up when I'm at the retreat next weekend. My piece of linen, they only had an 1/8 yard available on the website when I placed my order. And so I think I'm gonna have like, I can't remember, but I had done the math and I think I'm gonna have a 1.5 inch margin on the sides of my sampler, but I think that's fine. I think it's fine. I think for framing, you know, they recommend 2, but you can kind of get away with a little bit less. So anyways, we'll see. Yeah, so that is the start that I'm gonna do next week. The stitch along with at least 2 other people, but whoever wants to join in is welcome to. Hashtag EmmaKerridgeSAL. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm bringing just this model with me, but really my intention is to work on EmmaKerridge the whole time. My fear is that since it is a brightly colored linen, it's a little bit dark-ish looking. I don't know what the light is going to be like in the room that we're going to be in. So if I'm finding that it's challenging to stitch on it with the light in the room, I will end up just working on this instead. So this is actually kind of my backup project. And then the challenging thing with this is that it's on 46 count, but I think that's fine, because the last retreat I went to, I worked on just one project and it was also on 46 count, so I think it'll be fine. I do have a neck light, but it's really, the light that comes out of it is like almost a blue-white light, and it washes out the colors. Like there have been times where I've used it where I actually found I could see what I was stitching better with it off, even though I had less light. It's hard to explain. It's just the white light was like making the colors all washed out. Anyway, I might look into getting another net light one day that has maybe a bit of a warmer tone to it. Anyways, I'll bring it just in case. So as I am recording this, it is Friday, 23rd of April, I can't remember, but it is day 1 of Stitch North weekend 1. And I think this video will go up tomorrow, so on the Saturday, day 2 of weekend 1, and I'm attending weekend 2. So I have 1 week to get ready for Stitch North next week. And I do have a number of goals that I would like to meet, and actually one of them I managed to do in the last 24 hours. So I really wanted to participate in the Smalls Exchange, and I was like, cool, yeah, I'll participate in the Smalls Exchange. And then yesterday I was like, wait a second, Carmen, you need a small to exchange. You can't just show up and take something someone else made without bringing your own thing. So I scrambled and I had a marathon stitching day yesterday, and I did all of the stitching. I just had a little bit of the finishing to do this morning, but I did manage to do the whole thing within the space of 24 hours. So here is my small. And it's so little because I did it on a 40 count linen. So that's the front of my pin cushion, and this is the back of my pin cushion. So this pattern is called Starling by Modern Folk Embroidery. Did you think I was gonna make it through a Flosstube without mentioning Modern Folk Embroidery? Wrong. Here it is. So this is an adaptation of that pattern. I'll have it on screen so you can see what the pattern is intended to look like. So it's a really small sampler, but it lends well to being a pin cushion because the top half and the bottom half are nearly the same size. The bottom half, the alphabet half, has it's 2 stitches shorter, so I just added a blank space on the top and on the bottom of my alphabet so that it would end up being exactly the same size. And yeah, so I cut it in half and I basically did 2 little pieces of that sampler together. Another change that I did, and I'll get in a little closer, is that I added a little checkerboard border, and there are 2 empty spaces here before the seam, because with a pin cushion, or well, a pillow finish, I wanted you to be able to see the whole pattern when you look at it from the front or the back. And no matter what you do, there's always going to be a little bit of it that kind of gets lost in the seam. So I wanted there to be a bit of clearance before I did that seam, and adding the little checkerboard just gave it a slightly more visual interest, I guess. So that was the second change I did, and then the third change I did is in the alphabet on the back. In the original pattern, I don't know if there is significance to which letters Jacob chose to do in the secondary color, so in red in his case. They seem to be kind of random. Anyways, I kind of ignored that and I did my own thing, and I decided to, in the secondary color, stitch all of the letters and numbers that corresponded to the words Stitch North 2025. So the S, the T, the I, etc. for Stitch North are all in the lighter color, and then 2025 2025 are also in the lighter color. So it's not super on the nose that this is a Stitch North project, but I'll make sure to include in the little note that I'll include with my gift that is explained, so that they know where they got this if they forget in a couple of years from now. But yeah, I'm really happy with that. Oh, and yes, the the linen and the floss. So the linen is a leftover that I had from another small that I had done earlier this year. Nicholas Flamel Designs. I got a pack of 6 1/8 yard cuts that were dyed, and the colors themselves didn't have specific names, but the pack of linen was called, I think, Little Sampler Collection, something like that. If it's not that, I'll have it on screen. So yeah, it felt really good to use this piece of linen because I had used half of that 1/8 yard to do one small, and I still had, again, I mentioned this earlier, like kind of an awkward sized piece of linen that I didn't want to throw away because it's still really beautiful linen, but it's not big enough for like a big sampler or anything. But it was big enough for this, so I managed to use that entire 1/8 yard cut of linen, and I feel really good about that. So that's the linen. And the floss, I also feel really good about because I've been looking for an opportunity to use this. These flosses are naturally dyed. These are by Vera's Stitching, oh, I always forget if it's Corner. Yeah, Vera's Stitching Corner. These two colors, the darker one is called Hunter Marigold, the lighter one is called Ivy Marigold. These are the old tags. The new tags are much nicer, so I'll put that one in front. But yeah, so she is really cool because she naturally dyes flosses and she also dyes some fabrics as well. So her color range is really interesting because you aren't getting like these electric colors. Like you aren't gonna do EmmaKerridge in those purples with Vera's colors, kind of the other extreme of things. But yeah, I think it's really cool because I'm not totally sure, but I imagine that the stitchers of the day would have used color palettes similar to this. Anyways, she does have some really beautiful rich colors in her collection. So the two colors I chose are maybe not the best examples of that because they're kind of muddy greens. They're not the brightest colors, but I thought they looked really nice together. And I've been looking for an opportunity to use these because I have a kind of a small collection of her flosses and a couple pieces of her linen. I just haven't figured out a good time to use them, and this was perfect, and I think they look really nice together. Very subtle, kind of sepia, but I really like that. And when I finished it this morning, and I'm again feeling this right now, is that now that it's done, I don't really want to give it away. I like it. I guess I could stitch it again, but whoever receives this, I hope you take good care of it because I've already become attached. Anyways, yeah, so Darling Starling by Modern Folk Embroidery, the linen by Nicholas Flamel Designs, and the flosses by Vera's Stitching Corner. I got to use some floss that I was really looking forward to having the chance to test out. So yeah, now that she has a bigger range of colors, I would love to find a sampler that I could do a conversion with her floss. Maybe I'll ask her because I wonder if she's ever done that. I mean, she'll know her color range better than I do, so maybe she has some suggestions. And I follow her on Instagram, and she does use her own flosses for a variety of projects, so it is possible. Anyways, yeah, so this will be going off to somebody next weekend. Goodbye. Anyways, okay, the other goal that I have is I'd like to have table gifts. So I mentioned earlier that I've done one stitching retreat before. I went to Jacobpalooza a 1.5 years ago, and when I was there, I got so many little gifts and tokens and trinkets and little tools and whatnot from people at my table, but also just like random people at the retreat. I mean, the person who definitely blew us all away was Karen, the stitching owl, because she literally made an ornament, a whole fully finished ornament for every single person at the retreat. Mind you, there were only about 60 of us. There's gonna be something like 250 at the retreat next weekend, so would have been a bigger task, a more difficult task at Stitch North versus Jacobpalooza. But still, like, that was incredible. And I felt really guilty because I didn't have any table gifts for anybody. And it is definitely not a requirement to have gifts. That's what everybody told me, but it's nice. And I remember when I signed up for this retreat about 1 year ago, I was like, oh, I'm gonna make something for every single person there. Anyways, if you want to make a handmade gift for 250 plus people, you have to get started like 1 year or 2 ago. So that didn't happen, but I do have enough time to make table gifts. I think we are 8 to a table. I've only made 1 of them though, so I really need to get cracking. So I have showed this on my Flosstube before, but yeah, I made this morning. I need to make a whole bunch more of these. I kind of came up with a little sock design at Christmas time. I had made a bunch of these for my colleagues. So I'm gonna attach a little string to this, and this is gonna be a little ornament for everyone at my table. But I have only made 1 so far. I wanna make 1 for everyone at my table, so there's 8 to a table. So if you don't count me, that's 7. But then I'd also like to add 1 to my small, just, you know, as a little extra bonus thing. So then I'm at 8. And then maybe it would be good to have like 1 extra one just in case somehow there's an extra person at my table or something. They take about an hour to make. Actually, I naively thought back in wintertime, Christmas time, when I was making these originally, like, oh, it would be so cool to make one of these for everyone at the retreat. 1 hour when you're making 1 ornament is like not that bad, but when you have to make like hundreds of them, that was that was a very naive thought. Anyways, but to make them for the people at my table, plus 1 or 2 extras, is very doable. But I have 1 week, and if they take an hour to make and I need to make minimum 7 more, I need to allot 7 hours of my life in the next 7 days. So okay, I can make 1 per day. Okay, I better get going though on that. They are really cute though, like nobody's foot, I don't even think a newborn's foot would fit in that, but they're pretty cute. I like it. And if anyone wants my little recipe for this, you can let me know and I'll send it to you. I also thought a knitted gift would be nice because everyone at the retreat is going to be a cross stitcher, and there are a lot of cross stitchers who knit, but not all cross stitchers knit. So giving a knit gift is maybe kind of nice because they might not have something like this already. Yeah, and also it's pink and it's springtime, and apparently a lot of the, you know, the color theme has been pink with the, you know, exclusive designs and stuff coming out at Stitch North. So I felt like it was very apropos, and I have a bunch of leftover pink yarn from various socks that I've made. So I gotta get cracking on that. All right. The next thing on my list of goals is to become friends with ElizabethAnnCanStitch. Okay, I can't believe I'm actually saying this out loud, but whatever, it's not embarrassing. I like ElizabethAnnCanStitch, and I like the crafting she does, and I want to be her friend. But to be someone's friend, they have to know who you are, and I don't think she knows who I am. So my goal is to introduce myself to ElizabethAnnCanStitch, and I'm pretty sure that her friends don't call her ElizabethAnnCanStitch. They probably just call her Liz or maybe Elizabeth. So maybe I should stop referring to her as ElizabethAnnCanStitch. But anyways, I would like to introduce myself to her and not be weird and awkward and shy. And if I'm lucky, maybe she'll like me. I think she's really cool. I like her personality. She's very joyful, at least the way she presents herself on the internet. And I like her crafting, and she does a lot of knitting, and she uses bright, fun colors, and she just puts me in a good mood. And so I want to be okay, I shouldn't say I want to be her friend, because friendships happen naturally or they don't, you know, you can't force these things, but I want to be at least her acquaintance, and I think I can do that. So that's on my list of goals. And on the same note, I would like to encourage anybody who watches my Flosstube to say hi to me if you're there. I hope I'm not too shy. I hope you're not too shy. Let's say hi. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting nervous. Okay, so this is something I've thought a lot about. At the last retreat I went to, I didn't have a Flosstube. Nobody who knew who I was, and even though it did feel like walking into the lunchroom at the first day of high school, like Mean Girls on day one at her new school, and she ate her lunch in the bathroom, it did feel a little bit like, oh my god, I hope the cool kids like me. And now that I have a Flosstube, I have a different kind of pressure where I know some people there who I've met in the past. Oh, my screen just turned off. Hold on. Hi, okay, I had to make a cut because I experienced some technical difficulties, and honestly I haven't been able to fix them, so I can't actually see anything that I'm filming right now, so hopefully everything stays in frame. But we're just gonna go with it. Where was I? I was talking about people maybe saying hi to me at the retreat. Yeah, basically the point I want to say is that I have a little bit of anxiety about going to the retreat now because I have a Flosstube and because I have met some people who are going to be there before, but I'm not necessarily like really close friends with them. So there's a little bit of a pressure that is definitely self-imposed, that I'm like maybe gonna forget someone's name, or maybe I assume they remember me but they don't. And also there's like a little fear that I have that someone that I've had a whole conversation with in Instagram DMs is gonna say hi to me, and I'm like gonna look at them like, oh no, who are you? Because I realized I've had like days-long conversations with people in Instagram DMs, and then I realized like, oh, I never actually visited their profile. What's their first name? Or what do they look like? So there's a chance that there are people there that I've had conversations with, and they might come up and say hi to me, and I might be a little confused when I first see them. So if that happens, I still would like to encourage anybody who may want to say hi to say hi, but also don't want to be presumptuous and like assume that everyone wants to talk to me. Anyways, if you feel like saying hi, don't be shy. I am probably just as nervous, if not more nervous than you. I promise I'm nice in real life. I try to be anyways. And you might just need to remind me of your like Instagram handle or your YouTube handle if I look a little confused. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And I've had such meaningful conversations and like passionate conversations about designers and this and that with people over the last year and a half, and I'm so grateful for that. So I definitely don't want to put anyone off. I'll probably be fine. I literally perform for a living, so I can talk to people. It's fine, Carmen, you're gonna be fine. Okay, but yes, please do come say hi if you feel like it, but also like no pressure. You don't have to. Okay, another thing I want to try out when I'm at Stitch North, I'm kind of making this list for myself as like a to-do list, things I want to check out my list, so hopefully this isn't super boring to watch, but anyways, I would like to try Hearthside Craftworks frames and stands. I'm not actually sure that Caroline is bringing these things, but it was there when we were at Evertote's retreat that I attended a year and a half ago, Jacobpalooza. However, that was in London, Ontario, which is where Evertote is based, so I'm actually not entirely sure that they would be bringing these, but if they happen to have samples of the Hearthside Craftworks frames and stands, I'd like to test them out. So I don't know how to show this, but in my stitching life, this is, okay, I have really bad posture when I stitch. Here, I'm gonna just show you with something that I have in a frame. So I usually will stitch in a frame like this. I have a few of them, and I don't know if I'm in the shot, but I will kind of like rest my arm, this arm on my couch, and I stitch with my knee up. Sorry if this is super not ladylike, but I stitch like this for hours and hours, and my posture is like this for hours and hours, and I'm so into it that I don't even notice that like I'm in pain and that my neck is tired. And I actually, it's funny, when I met with Leanne, we talked about injury, and I have a fear of getting injured from stitching or knitting because I am a cellist, and it's like really bad if I get an injury, like a strain or a sprain or arthritis or tennis elbow or whatnot. Like those can be career-ending injuries. I've known many people who have literally had to change careers because they got a chronic tendonitis that just wouldn't go away. So I have to be really careful to have good posture, and when I stitch I do not have good posture. And when I talked to Leanne about this, literally later that day I was at my cousin's place and I was making like bubbles, you know, bubble like with soap. I was making bubbles with her 2-year-old daughter, and like like I threw out something in my back. Now, I had been furiously stitching in the previous days, including on the train, in which my posture was even worse. And I think that was just not good for my back. And I was also sleeping on a different bed, and I wasn't sleeping enough, and I had a different pillow. And I'm sure there were different contributing factors in that. But anyways, I kind of threw out my back, and I'm much better now. It's fine. But it is a little bit of a concern that it could happen again, and I feel like I've been kind of getting away with it because I'm young is relative anyways, but I'm getting away with it right now in my life, but I'm worried about the future, and so I would like to look into these stands, and I'm definitely not buying anything like that while I'm at the retreat, but I would just like to know what it feels like to stitch with those and what my ideal setup should be so that I don't give myself a either cello career ending industry or stitching career, it's not really a career, but a stitching ending injury. That would be really sad because I would like to play cello for many more years, and I would like to stitch for many more years. If I had to give up something, it would probably be knitting, which would make me really sad. But I would also like to knit for a long time as well. Anyways, so that's one thing I would be interested in looking at while I'm in Toronto next week. I would also really like to visit every vendor. I was just looking at the vendor list. Maybe I'll make like a little bit of a vlog style recap of Stitch North, and it would be nice to visit and highlight all of the vendors. However, I would have to check in with everyone to make sure that, you know, they don't mind me filming their their booth. So we'll see about that, but that would be maybe kind of cool. In any case, I would like to at least just like look at all of the vendors, because when I went to the retreat a year and a half ago, it was just Evertote. They were the only ones vending, and they do have a lot that you can shop for just at the Evertote booth, but there are I don't know, about a dozen other vendors, so it would be nice to visit them all. I don't necessarily need to buy things everywhere, like I don't need to spend money just to spend money, but you know, I think it's nice to look around. I am kind of on the lookout for an Ort catcher. I actually think that would be really practical for me to have. I don't know if any of the vendors sell things like that. I also would like to have a project roll, because all of my finished projects that are not framed, which is, you know, 99.999% of them, are just rolled up on my shelf over there, and they are literally getting dusty. So it would be nice to just have them protected in something. So I don't know if that is something that I would be able to buy there, but we'll see. And another big goal that I have is that I want to get a selfie with my model of Sarah Allden. So my first ever model was stitched for Evertote, but it was again an 1897 Schoolhouse Samplers sampler, and they had it framed professionally, and they've shown it on their Flosstube a couple of times, and I've never seen anything I've stitched framed, and that was a big piece. So I'm so honored that something I've stitched has been given, you know, that opportunity to be professionally framed, and I would just really like to have a chance to have a selfie. And actually, when I talked to Leanne, she said that she would have her model that she made as well as her antique there, so it would be cool to be able to see all three of them there and maybe get a selfie with them. Anyways, Leanne's actually at the retreat right now, so that's cool. Anyway, so I don't know if her model and the antique will still be there when I'm there next week, but either way, I really want to see the model that I made in its frame on its throne and to maybe get a selfie with it. Maybe somebody can take a picture. I'm really excited to see that. So I have a couple of things that I need to take care of before Stitch North. Obviously I need to make a whole bunch more of these. I also want to take an inventory of all of my Roxy Floss linen and floss, but I also have a lot of things that are kitted up because I want to make sure I'm not buying things that I already have, because I am liable to do that. But also to see where I'm missing things. Like I have one particular project that's kitted up, but a lot of the skeins are like almost done. So if I can make like a little shopping list just to know what I'm low on, know what I have in excess, so that I'm, you know, spending my money in an intelligent way. And the other kind of goal or idea that I have for before Stitch North is that I'm actually going to be going to Toronto. When do I go? I think I go on Tuesday. So a few days early. My sister lives in Toronto, so I'm going to be staying with her for a couple of days, just a chance to visit her. And I thought that it would be really cool to visit a bunch of yarn stores while I was there. And, you know, in the city I live in, I think there are 3 yarn stores here. So my mind was like, well, maybe there's like 5 or 6 in Toronto. There's like 20 plus yarn stores in Toronto. So no chance that I'm going to every single one, but it would be nice to visit a bunch of them. And I might make like a separate yarn store themed video before my Stitch North recap goes up. So if you're into that, be on the lookout for that. So those are all my goals. I think that's everything, but I do have one other big thing to talk about, and that is an incredible piece of Happy Mail that I got 2 days ago. Hold on, let me get the box. Okay, I have this big box full of yarn and books and patterns. And okay, so a while ago, speaking of people that I've had long conversations on Instagram with, somebody who has followed me and who I've discussed many stitchy things with is a lovely lady called Cindy, and she asked me if she could send me a package, and I was like, okay. And she sent me this like gigantic box full of mostly yarn, but also there's some needles in here, there's patterns in here. She sent me a plum street pattern that's so nice and generous. She sent me, hold on, she sent me 10 balls of this Brava stripe, which is a Knit Picks yarn, which is fun because I don't think you can get Knit Picks in Canada. She's in the United States. And there's 10 balls of it, and it comes in 5 colors. And I have all 5 of the colors in 2 balls each. And I think when she bought this, she might have had a certain pattern in mind called the Brava stripe blanket, because you need 5 balls, you need 10 balls of that yarn, of this yarn, 2 of each color to make that blanket, and that's exactly what she sent me. So I don't know if she intended to make this blanket and then changed her mind. Anyways, it's what I'm gonna do with it at some point. And it's like super soft, and I've been thinking about knitting a blanket, so it's like perfect. Did I show this color yet? I don't think I did. Did I show this one? There's 5 of them and 10 balls in total. Hold on, I got some of them here. And then she also gave me this other yarn that I've already started using. Oh my goodness, there's like way too much stuff here. So she gave me nearly 3 balls of this yarn called Flika, which is a Lion brand yarn, and I looked it up and it is sadly discontinued, but I'm going to the Netherlands this summer, and I'm gonna be staying with my friend who has a almost 2-year-old, and she's actually pregnant again, so I'm gonna have to make some baby knits for her. Anyway, so I wanted to make something for her 2-year-old as well as for her baby to, you know, thank her for letting me stay with her. And this Flika yarn was the perfect yarn and the perfect amount to make a sweater. So this is the beginning of the, what's it called? The Hans sweater, designed by Pernille Larsen, who is the designer behind Knitting for Olive. And that brand started out as a design brand, specifically baby and children knits. So I figured that I've never knit anything for a baby, so, or for a toddler. So I felt like it was a wise choice to go with that brand just because that was what they started out doing. So this is just like a very simple raglan sweater. with some ribbing at the top and the bottom and at the end of the sleeves. And it's definitely not going to fit me because it's intended for a 4-year-old. The girl it's going to is only 2 right now, but I didn't want to, they had a size for a 2-year-old and then it skipped to a 4-year-old. And I decided I would make the 4-year-old version because I feel like they'll get more use out of it that way. So it'll probably be too big for her now. But anyways, it's such a fun yarn. I feel like a little girl would love yarn like this. It looks like Fruit Loops. The color is called Toucan. But yeah, it is discontinued. And it's 50% cotton and 50% acrylic. Machine washable and dryable. So perfect for them. Anyways, I'm so happy. And it's like I couldn't have picked anything better for this project that I wanted to do. And Cindy, oh my goodness, there's like, I sort of left it all in this box, and I just kind of keep like digging through here and pulling out like, this is cool. This is like a recycled yarn. And then look at this thing. Look how crazy that is. That would be such a funky hat. Anyways, this is like the most generous gift from like someone who owes me nothing. You know, like just decided, just because she's nice, to gift me with all of this. So Cindy, you're gonna get an email from me. I'm like, moment that this is not filming anymore, I am emailing you. And I think this is sock yarn. I wonder if it's self-striping or if it just changes colors randomly. I won't know until I ball it up. But it's gorgeous and I'm very happy to have it. Oh my goodness, woolens and nosh. I've never heard of this. Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, maybe you can get it in Canada, but I haven't come across it. So it's like really fun for me. Anyways, Cindy, thank you so much. There's also like knitting books in here. I haven't completely absorbed everything that is in this box because it's just like so much. And I can't even imagine how much shipping must have costed because it's not light. There's like books in here. So Cindy, I have a lot of words, but I also have no words. Like, this is beyond generous. You could have just written me like a postcard and that would have been super nice. Like, this is, I'm kind of blown away. Thank you so much. This sweater is going to a very special little girl who belongs to a family that I love, love, love. And I'm gonna make a blanket for me. And every time I wrap myself in this blanket, I'm gonna think of you. So thank you. I'm so blown away and also so full of ideas of what to do with all of this fun yarn. Because there's like lots of different fibers in here and lots of fun colors. Like, look at that. It's like lava. Maybe not lava. Lava's not really orange. I don't know. I've never seen lava. Anyways, Cindy, you are a very generous and special person. Thank you so much. I'm blown away. Anyways, on that very, very happy note, check this out. It's like a kind of vintage pattern. That's so pretty. Anyways, what is this? I don't really know who. Cross Stitch Christmas 1991. I guess this is cut out from a magazine. Anyways, if anyone is dying to know what this is, I will try and figure it out. But anyways, Cindy, thank you so much. And to anybody who watched this whole thing, thank you so much. And to anyone who's coming to Stitch North next weekend, I hope to meet you. And to anyone who's watching this while at Stitch North Weekend 1, don't buy all the 40 count linen, okay? Save some for me. I will also take 46 count, okay? But sharing is caring, okay? All right. Thank you so much for watching. I got a lot of cleaning up to do. I had a lot of knitting to do. Oh, I gotta make a whole bunch of these. And yes, I will see you soon with recaps of all the fun adventures I'm about to have. Okay, bye-bye.